Man, you know that you just told a great story. It's funny how everybody who does anything like this always has a really interesting story about how they stumbled into something, or good or bad,
Hmm.
went through some things. Man, it's a funny thing. I'll say that speaking was fascinating to me. That because I saw the potential that it had for helping me to get off the plantation.
Hmm.
I had a really good plantation. Massa was pretty good to me in terms of pay.
Yeah,
When I was at Syracuse University, I was making over $100,000 a year, and so, but the thing was, I just didn't like the job. I didn't like the situation. It just didn't feel comfortable for me. And here's so every year, there would always be this big argument in the department over who was going to get the biggest raise. Were you going to
got
get
you.
a 1% raise, a 2% raise, a three, and all that. And so let's say you make $100,000 a year, or 115, whatever I was making at the time. A 2% raise is about what, $2,500 or something like that, right?
Hmm.
And so I remember doing my first couple of speaking gigs, and I was like, wait a minute, you're making this much money just for talking for 20, 30 minutes?
Yeah,
And so I would make as much money in 20 or 30 minutes that I was going to get for a raise for a whole year. And,
right.
and I remember going to my department chairman, and I said, you know what? I'm just going to do a favor for you, and you just owe me one. Don't worry about, when you give it out raises, don't worry about giving one to me. Just give one to everybody else, and then I'll just call in a favor later on. That's what my thought was, because the truth was, I was like, I don't really have to argue with people over $2,000 anymore, because I know I
Right.
make $1,000 somewhere else. And so I found that this whole industry, it's really fascinating, how a lot of these organizations are prepared to write big checks for almost nothing. And the key idea seems is knowing how to position yourself in the right way where you fulfill the needs and expectations. And so let me ask you this: so as you got started with speaking, and I know you teach a great pro speakers. And by the
Hmm.
way, everybody, the URL, actually, Al's doing a webinar pretty soon with my brother Lawrence on how to get started in the speaking industry. The website, I'm gonna give you guys a URL. It's greatprospeakers.com/webinar.
Yep.
Greatprospeakers.com/webinar. Somebody please put that in. Greatprospeakers.com/webinar. So when you were trying to figure out the game, the difference with you versus everybody else is, I know a whole lot of smart people who could give great speeches. Well, some of whom could give great speeches. I know a lot of smart people who get a few gigs here and there every now and then. But you are
Hmm.
one of the people I've ever seen that just seem to always have an opportunity. And it's not because, like you, again, it's not because you hosted a show on CNN and you're just so famous that they're just calling, blowing your phone up. It's because you have a process where you're able to really make that system work for you.
Hmm.
How did you get to that point? Or I know it's hard to summarize it in a quick answer, but can you give some bullet
No,
points?
actually, it's easier to summarize than you think it is. What it is that after I got tired of chasing my tail and I started understanding that I was going to need some help in the industry, and really let me take my time and understand what's going on about a process. And I had the difference between that is the difference between being a chef and a restaurant owner. See, when I first got in the industry, I was thinking more like a chef. But thankfully, because I have been managing restaurants, I understood how businesses worked, and I started realizing no. It's not so much the cooking, because I've seen restaurants with people lining up, coming back and forth in there, and the food is just average. Like it's not even that good. It's okay, but it ain't great. But and the reason they're coming in there is because it's more of it's approached as a business and a process. So what happened for me is that I realized that I needed to find somebody who I can learn from. Okay. And we teach this right now. So we call it the success cycle. It's real simple. Get somebody I can learn from. In other words, I had to learn how to model greatness. I needed some people who were doing the business in a similar fashion to the way I thought I wanted to do it. I needed to be able to look at them, whether from the outside or inside, and figure out what they were doing that worked. Then I needed to actually go do it. Now, that's where people fall off all the time. I can't tell you how many times, and it used to happen to me all the time when I was young. Somebody tells you to go do something, but you don't do it. or you don't do it the way he or she said to do it first. That doesn't mean you don't adjust it or that you don't change it so that it fits for you. But if you're going, if someone is giving you some advice about how to launch or run something, you got to give it a shot, because you're going to learn more by actually doing it, even if it's not quite right for you, than you would if you didn't do anything at all. And so I started when I was reading books on the industry, or I started paying for classes. There's something else. Nobody's going to give you anything for free. I understood that also from running restaurants. I could want to cook a great meal. I got to pay somebody for the raw ingredients, though. Somebody got to bring me some stuff to the kitchen so I can cook with. All right. And so I was not adverse to saying I'm going to pay for the information that I want. I just want to make sure it's from a good source. And so I learned to model greatness. I got things that they said were working. I used them, and we like to call that deliberate practice right now. That is, I deliberately did what I thought was going to work. If it didn't work, it didn't work. That's okay. I can cross it off the list and keep working and tweaking it. And then what I did is I got real feedback and coaching based on the moves that I made. So it's not that, oh, Al, you were great, man. That was a hand clap, standing ovation. See, all that stuff makes you feel good. There's nothing wrong with that. We all want that. But what I needed was real tangible feedback to say, okay, Al, that was cool, but you forgot to mention your product on stage. Or that was cool, but you forgot to ask for some referrals. Or that was cool, but you didn't really deliver your points 1, 2, 3, and then give it to them in a neat, nice little package at the end of the talk so that they could take it home with them and pass it along to somebody else as well. And so what happened is when I started making my way through this process, and the funny, I didn't know this process step by step back then. I just realized when I look back on it, I was the type of guy, if you told me to do this, I was going to do it. And I was going to keep flipping it, working with it, tweaking it until I figured out why it worked. Because if it worked for you, I figured some version of it should work for me at least a little bit. It might not work exactly the same. I understand that, especially because some of the people I was learning from, we wasn't even the same. You feel what I'm saying? So I knew it wasn't going to work exactly like it might work for other folks, but I knew you're not going to tell me that this thing can't work in some shape, form, or fashion. And so I tried many aspects of the industry, and I actually applied what I was learning.